Hello and welcome to another edition of the Avid Screencast. My name is Christian Förster, and lo and behold, I'm finally on Media Composer 5. So this week I'll give you an introduction to some of the new features in this release. And I'll try to make it quick because there are zillions of other tutorials out there going into way more depth. So I implore you to check out the show notes this time for a lot of those. But let's get started with some of the new features of MC5. Now, the most obvious one is the Smart Tools. If they are enabled, you can directly access functions that you had to go into a special mode before within the timeline. If you are over a segment, you're immediately in segment mode. If you're close to an edit, there are the trim rollers. And if there are any audio keyframes available, you'll be able to change those without going into any special mode. Now, as you can see, the modes change depending on where I am on the track. In the upper track, it's always the red mode. So in segment mode, it's lift override mode. So if I go into the upper part of a track here and move it around, I'll overwrite the segment that was before it. And if I'm on the lower part of a track, I'm in extract splice in mode. So if I move the segment here, it is being spliced in between the two other segments. Same thing with the trim modes. On top of the track, I'm in override trim mode, so I'll override whatever comes next. On the lower part of the track, I'll be in ripple mode. All of those of you familiar with Final Cut will know what that means. It will ripple the rest of the sequence if I trim. If I'm in the center of a cut, I'll have the good old dual roller trim that we all know and love. So this gives you the option to access different modes without actually going into those modes. And I'll try to leave them on and try to work with it and try to see if it drives me nuts. But I think, it's actually a very nice addition once you get used to it. What I find very useful is mapping the enable or disable all smart tools button to your keyboard so you can quickly enable and disable the smart tools. You can also enable them one by one. So if you only want to use the segment modes here, you can do that, and you won't get bothered with the trim modes if you're near a cut. Another new feature is linked selection, also something that you might be used to if you're coming from Final Cut. Well, linked selection does exactly what you think it would. It links video and audio that belongs together. In this case, these three obviously go together. So if I select one, I actually select all three. If I'm not in linked selection mode, I'll select the track one by one, the way it used to be. Also something that you might want to map to your keyboard. Maybe Shift L, huh? Little Final Cut joke. So you may also have noticed the modes have moved their position, but they're basically the same way they were before. You have all your modes here and can change between them. The only new thing here is the motion effect editor that can always get into by clicking that little button. I'm not really sure why that is, because if you're on a motion effect clip, you can just go into effect mode and also get to the motion effect editor. And if you're not on a motion effect clip, I'm not really sure what the motion effect editor helps you with. So, but you can always get into motion effect editor whenever you like, which may help you if you're into that kind of thing. So that's the modes. And they have actually just changed position, but work the same way they worked before. Now let's get into our track panel that has changed a bit as well. There are no more little speaker icons here, but actually solo and mute buttons. So you can solo different tracks. You can also mute different tracks, then solo something, Doesn't work very much differently than before, but looks more like Pro Tools now, which I think is a good thing. Also, you can now expand the track control panel and have a couple of more options. And if I expand the tracks, make them a little larger, you have even more options there. You can now turn on waveforms for single tracks, which is nice. Also the audio keyframes or the panning keyframes if you like that. And you can also completely turn off an audio track, which is different from muting it, because this way it doesn't use any resources. Then there are these 5 little empty buckets here, where you can store color correction parameters for your audio clips. No, of course not. That was a bad joke. I know. No, click on one of these empty buckets and you'll be presented with the real-time audio suite tool. Now, this allows you to insert track-based audio plugins that are real-time. First, you can select the track that you want to put your plugin on. Then you can select the insert. There are 5 available and you can change them here. And then you can say which insert you'd like. For example, let's go with a compressor. And it will automatically add that in real time.
Zusätzlich ein großer Spaß.
You can see the compressor is there. Can get back into it by just clicking. So you can have up to 5 different audio plugins playing in real time on each track. They are all track-based, so if you want to apply a plugin to a specific clip, you'll either have to give that its own audio track or use the good old render audio suite thingy that you can still use, but there you can of course only use one plugin at a time without mixing down anyway. So let's get rid of the compressor here. This is already a compressed recording. Alright, as you've probably also heard, you can now add stereo tracks to Media Composer. What you cannot do, by the way, is combine 2 mono tracks to a stereo track within the sequence. All you can do is edit stereo tracks into stereo tracks in the sequence. Adding a stereo track to a sequence is simple. You just go to Clip and select New Audio Track Stereo or press Shift-Command-U. And there you go, a new stereo track has been added. So let's say I want to add this sleeve phase clip, but not with 2 mono tracks as it is now, but with a stereo track. How would I do that? I'd have to go into the master clip and go to Clip, Modify, Set Multi-Channel Audio, and gang the stereo audio tracks. Now if I open this in the source monitor, these are stereo tracks, and I can just edit the thing into the timeline as a stereo track. Another thing that has changed is the interface settings. A lot of whining about that. They have been severely dumbed down, and I actually like the slider here that makes it very simple to change pretty much all the setting with one click. You know, that is totally okay with me. I would like some not so candy highlight colors if I had the choice, but that is me. But you can still tweak a couple of things. For example, your timeline tracks. Let's just say I want to change my video track color. I have all these different options here. But if none of these colors suit my taste, I can just Option click or Alt click on a Windows machine on one of these color swatches here. and the system's color picker comes up, and I can use any color that I like. Thank you for watching this episode of the Avid Screencast. If you like, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast at avidscreencast.com, where you can also watch past episodes and subscribe on iTunes. Do not forget to follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/avidscreencast, and on Facebook, facebook.com/avidscreencast. And if you'd like to know what kinds of things I do professionally, check out editguide.de, where I promote myself a bit. Once again, thanks for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.